Well, here we go. This is a big episode. I've been saving this one all year for the Tour de France because when I think of the Tour de France, I think of this man, Phil Liggett. He is the voice of cycling. He is the master, and we've got him back on Life in the Peloton. G'day, guys. I'm Mitch Stocker, of course. Welcome to Life in the Peloton, presented by MAP. And it's a special time for MAP because they have just dropped their swap-out jersey for Jayco Alula and the Live Alula Jayco team. The women's team will be wearing it as well. You've seen the men rocking it this week at the Tour de France. What a cool jersey. It's also got the new Aero Pro 3.0 jersey. That thing is super lightweight for that beautiful hot weather over in France at the moment. As I mentioned before, guys, we've got him. Phil Liggett is back, but this time it's a little bit different. Now, Phil, he's done over 50 Tour de France's. He's done 18 Olympic Games. He's commentated on all kinds of sports, whether it's ski jumping, bobsled. I think he's done water polo, but he is the voice of cycling. He's a dear friend of mine. I hope I can say that. Phil and I catch up every so often. And when I asked him to come on the pod, he was delighted to come on. But this time it was different because this time, as you guys know, I've been in the comm box with SBS. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity to actually pick the brains of the master. Phil Liggett is undoubtedly the best commentator cycling has ever had and probably will ever had. And for me to get the opportunity to sit down with him and just go, Phil, teach me to be a better commentator, I just thought, what an opportunity. Of course, at the end of all that, there may be a sneaky chance where we commentate together. Look, I'm not going to spoil the episode, guys. This really was a pleasure. I love speaking to Phil, and especially to get a masterclass from him in art of commentary. The art of commentary with Phil Liggett. Doesn't get much better than that. I hope you enjoy, guys. Here we go. This is the silly season of cycling. The Tour de France is upon us. Kick back and enjoy.
This is Life in the Peloton with Mitch Stocker. Brought to you by our friends at MAP. Welcome to Life in the Peloton.
Phil Liggett, how are you?
I'm great, Mitch. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you, Phil. We chatted. It was a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but in the early time.
Seems a long time ago.
It is.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
2018.
In the days you were
it
a
was.
cyclist. Remember that?
Exactly. When I was actually riding the bike.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit closer to you now because, look, well, not so close. Let's just give everyone a bit of an idea. 52 Tour de France's,
Yeah.
17 Olympics. You've been in the game. For me, there's a few people, when you watch different sports, I think about cricket. I always think about the Australian commentators, Richie Benaud. You had Bill Lawry and Tony Gregg was on there. And I think about cricket and I hear these commentators now. And look, I love them, Adam Gilchrist. I'm talking about Australian commentators now.
Sure.
Brett Lee. And they're great, but for me, I still miss the voice of cricket, the Richie Benauds of the time.
Of course.
When I think about rugby league, we've got Ray Warren, and I think about weightlifting, these different commentators. And when I think about cycling, I only think about yourself. You're the voice I grew up with, and for a lot of people, you're the person that they first fell in love with cycling.
It's true. Of course, I didn't set out to become a legend, as they keep telling me I am. Because I was a cyclist. I wasn't as good as you were. I turned down my pro contract in Belgium, and I had the chance of becoming a journalist. I took the job. And while I was being a journalist in Fleet Street, being trained, I was invited to become the organiser of the Tour of Britain Milk Race, which was a huge race at the time, biggest amateur race in the world, in fact, and a long race. It was 15 days in those days. And I didn't know how to organise anything, but I did the job. And I adopted the attitude to just follow your nose until you find where you don't want to go. And I never did find where I don't want to go. Television... I got involved in television in 1978 because the guy I was working with as his driver and had taken me out on the Tour de France as his driver, he sadly got killed in a car crash. His name was David Saunders. And so I just said to him, during those 5 years, I learned from him. And when he died, the television network rang me up and said, no interviews if you want the job. and we've had lots of applicants. And we've taken a dim view of the people who, before David's body is cold, they're asking for this job. I said, hey, you're offering me the job? And the answer is yes, but I don't ever want it to be seen that I've stepped into David's shoes. And that's how my life started. And then the world found me. CBS rang me up and said, hey, you got to work for us. I said, well, look, ITV and World of Sport, I owe a huge favour for. They put me in the industry of being a commentator, and they've looked after me. So if they say I can work for you, I'll work for you. And they said, if you can still work for us, then he can work for you. So all of a sudden I work for 2 networks. And then the same happened with Channel 9 in Australia and SBS. It was Optus in those days. And then it ricocheted around the world. I became the voice of English cycling around the world. I didn't ask for any work, and to this day I've never asked for a job in television. But I'm totally flattered by the reception that people give me, and they made me a legend, not me.
Well, the voice makes you a legend too, and it's what you say, and that's what I want to talk about today. Because look, I've been lucky enough the last couple of years. Well, lucky enough, maybe not. Some people maybe won't think that, but I've been able to sort of step into a little bit of your shoes and understand what it's like on the other side, and do a little bit of commentary with, Matt Keenan and Dave McKenzie in the commentary box, even Simon Gerrans, Gracie Elvin. So we've got some great little crew here in Australia, and I think everyone thinks this on the outside. Well, I certainly thought this. Oh, yeah, I could probably do that. You're watching at home and you're watching the racing and you're critiquing what the commentators are saying. They might, get a rider wrong. You think, well, of course it's that rider. Or you're sitting in the comfort of your home and you might commentate in your own mind a little bit. I could probably do this. But getting behind the mic, in the box, it's a completely different game. And I've got to experience that firsthand. I want to sort of talk about the art of commentary, and I think there's different layers in it, and I'd love you to help me explain this, almost like a lesson per se for you today to coach me and anyone out there, just to unpack a little bit the art of it, because it's about storytelling. I believe it's about not just explaining what gear they're riding or the power they're doing, which is easy for me to go to. It's what I know. It's about describing the picture, I think. I guess probably for me asking, Phil, in your eyes, what is the art of commentary?
Yeah. Well, I remember once when I was at a UCI meeting, because I became the assistant, or what do they call it, the vice president of the Association de Cyclisme of organisers in the world because of the Tour of Britain Milk Race. I was the organiser. And I sat alongside then director of the Tour de France, Félix Leviton, who was the big god, of course. And we got talking, but somebody said in the room, I was being trained I was doing my sort of basic as a journalist at the time, and I wasn't yet a commentator. And somebody said in the room, well, don't forget, every picture tells 1,000 words. I thought, my God, I hope it doesn't, because I'll be out of a job as a journalist. I'm just learning to be a journalist. But of course, then I became a television commentator, and that's exactly what it is. I look at the television, and I don't go to the television with all these, they call them Liggettisms. I don't write anything down. I don't think of anything. One of the famous things that happened to me when I started work with CBS, a little PA, a personal assistant, would come over, production assistant would come across and say, Mr. Lewis, the producer wants to know what your opening words will be when we go to air. I said, I have no idea. I said, it'd probably be something like hello. And then I heard him in her earpiece. I didn't have an earpiece in. I'll leave him alone. He's a Brit. When the lights go green, he'll be fine. And that's how I roll through life in television. You describe what you're seeing. When we go live, we've got a picture. And if the sun is out or the rain's coming down, I say hello and welcome. It's a dreadful day here for the start, folks, because as you can see, the rain is absolutely pouring down. And then you pick up a dog who's drowning in the street or something, and you talk about what you see. And the only advice I got when I got my very first commentary job, which was in the wake of David Saunders, the guy who died in the car crash just weeks later. And when they gave me the job, they said, well, you're going in at the deep end, Phil, because you've got a 45-minute live show. And And I was the organiser of the race, which I was about to commentate on. I brought 88 professionals to London, biggest ever outside of a world championship. I had Bernard Thévenet there, the winner of the Tour de France. And I had the world champion, Jerry Knettman. I'd signed up all the British pros who never had contracts in their lives. I contracted them to ride the race. And Paul Sherwen, riding one of his very first professional races. And there was no thoughts at that point of him ever working alongside me in the commentary box. And I was in a box. If I suffered from any form of outside worry, then I wouldn't be up this pylon. I climbed 100 feet up this pylon where they put my commentary box. And when I got up there was a couple of televisions, a few wires, a telephone, and one man. So I climbed in. He goes, hi. I go, hi. He says, right, okay then. Well, he settled down. He said, I'll leave you to it. I said, oh, thanks. I said, well, what do I actually do?
Yeah.
Is this your first time? I said, yeah, it is. Oh, well, he says, what you've got, he says, are two televisions. He said, that one we call a monitor, and this one's a television. And when the pictures on the television are the same as what's on your monitor, you're live. And he says, anything else you want? He said, this red button, if you want to swear or shout at the audience or cough, press the red button, nobody will hear you. Otherwise, they'll hear everything you say. He said, any other question? I said, well, no, sounds okay. And he left.
You were alone?
I was alone in the box, nobody helped me. And I was also the organiser of the race, so I was in control of starting the race as well.
Wow.
And so I looked up the street about 200 metres, all the pros on the line. And don't forget, this is a big deal, bringing these most famous pros to Britain. And Mike Barrett, who was a very famous boxing promoter, was trying to break into cycling promotion. And he'd employed me. But in the meantime, poor Davey was killed, and I was the commentator. And so I was sat there. Then Dickie Davies, most famous anchor in Britain at the time. I mean, he was God. And the phone goes on the desk, and I pick it up and go, hello. He goes, hi, Phil, Dickie Davies here, old son. I said, Dickie, calling me, I couldn't believe it. Great to hear from him. He said, listen, we're just doing the wrestling, then we'll go to an ad break, then I'll come back. I'll give you a big build-up, and then you're on. And he said, all you got to do is remember why you got the job. I said, Dickie, that's what I'm thinking. I have no idea why I got this job. He says, because they liked you. He said, don't change, now you're going on television.
Right, that's great advice.
Be the person you are, because that's what they saw when they employed you.
Yeah.
And so he said, just don't change. And that's the only advice I've ever been given in television. And it's the same advice when 10 years later, I asked Paul to work alongside me because he was coming into retirement from his pro career. And I said, Paul, just remember, everybody loves you. That's why he got all the pro contracts, because his morale never went down. He worked with the riders. Any rider on the Tour de France crashed, Paul was put in his room to bring his morale up overnight and get him going again, because Paul was a hard man. He raced without gloves throughout his whole career, and he was famous for it. But when we would walk into the room, the guy would be there, bandages on his knees, and he'd go, what's up with you? And the guy said, I fell off. Are you all right? A bit sore. He says, get on with it, he says. You've got to ride the Tour tomorrow. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And that was what he did. He brought you back to life. And throughout the 33 years we went on to work together on television, Paul and I became the longest-serving sports duo in any sport in the world on any network. It was a record, 33 years. We sat side by side. We never had a crossword between us. We laughed our way around the world, and we entertained the people. And I think about him every day, because he walks around behind me all the time. And that's not going to change. But that's all you've got to remember, Mitch, is to be yourself and have that personality to drive.
It's a simple thing. And I'm assuming you know it too, that it does take someone to probably remind you, Paul, or someone else, or even someone from the exterior, maybe, just to go, hey, I don't want to necessarily use those words, be yourself. Because I find I come into this booth, everyone's doing their thing, and you suddenly feel like you've got to be, or you are going this way. It's here in Australia. Look, it's 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And the audience doesn't know that, because they're watching it the next day. They don't know that you're tired. You've been commentating for 6 hours. It's 4 in the morning. There's 3K to go. You've got to bring the energy.
Exactly.
And I have to continually remind myself of that. And even people message me in, or who want to help me, and say, Mitch, commentate the pictures. There might be a beautiful chateau there, and I'm telling some long-winded story because I think it's interesting. But actually, let's talk about what's going on in the race.
That's absolutely right. And I have the reverse when I work on American television in California. It's very often 3 o'clock in the morning, the opposite way to Australia. And so they're getting up, heading towards getting up time, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And we're talking about 30 kilometres of neutralised riding out the country in the Tour de France. So we tell stories to bring them all around with us. And I actually also, I'll make a specific mention on the East Coast, it's okay. On the West Coast rather, but over on the far side, California way, it's not okay. They're asleep. So you've got to bring them into the show. And I always say, for you guys over in California, get the kettle on, because we're about to roll out, and we're going to have a big race on the hands today. And and we make them feel part of the show and bring them into the room, and it works because on your social media you see them say, "Hey, thanks for including me in the commentary." They actually write and tell you how happy they are that you haven't forgotten that the cheese on toast is still a couple of hours away, for breakfast or whatever it is. I think it's a very enjoyable time to talk to people. Most commentators don't feel their audience, which is not an easy thing to do when you can't see them. But at times on the Tour de France, in the days we did the world feed as well as our own network, which in my case was ITV with Paul, it became NBC, it was CBS before that, ESPN before that, and Versus and OLN. But they all moved on to finally be NBC. You've got to remember when you're talking to these people, you've got to bring them into the room. And you're talking to different audiences too, because then I used to also do the commentary for SBS all at the same time. These networks weren't paying me. They were going through the organisation of the Tour. And the Tour de France, loosely speaking, paid me as well. But when we were going to talk to the world, the people back in the USA, or indeed Great Britain, don't know that we're actually talking for the world. I mean, they're our bread and butter. They're the people who's paying us our salaries. But I still don't want to let the world feel robbed. So I find out where the riders are, because in South Africa, I go into South Africa, maybe 2 South Africans taking part. I subtly drop it in. I won't just pointedly say, "Hey, Phil, you guys watching in Cape Town, this guy's here." That's not the idea. I just mentioned that one the ride of the day today was done by Darryl Impey from Cape Town, because he made a good move today. And it's unusual to see the South Africans, isn't it, Paul, do so well? And he goes, "Yeah, it is," and he'll give a little story. But we're not talking directly to the country.
Nice.
We've got to involve the Brits as well. You've got to think of your audience. Very, very important, Mitch. And I'll tell you, most people don't think of their audience. And nowadays, I was a kind of a pioneer, don't forget. Nobody could talk about cycling. I was lucky. I mightn't have got a job if there had been the competition there is now, because everybody wants to be a TV commentator, and some are good. I never criticise any commentators. I'm in a very difficult position, both old and in a glass house. So I just listen. I have my opinions, but I never share them.
What about the relationship in the box? Because it's something important. I'm understanding too. That you've got your special comments from ex-pros like myself, and then you've got your lead commentator, which I've seen. Simon Gerrans, he's stepped into the role sometimes when Matt Keenan hasn't been there, and I get to see it firsthand of the job that a lead commentator does. No criticism at Simon, but it's a big job. It's a big shoes to fill, and it's a completely different role. Talk to me about a little bit the different roles, but also how important that relationship is too, to understand each other and to have that, like you and Paul had it was like a friendship, and you could feel it, whether that was true or not, and I believe it was. You felt that on through the commentary.
Paul and I were pretty special. We didn't consciously see this link when I asked him to see if he would work with me. I read in the English newspaper that Paul was going to retire from being an international pro in Europe. He was been a pro there for 10 years, but he was going to ride a couple of years back home and then end of his career. So at the end of his final pro race, it was Paris-Nice, wasn't his final pro race, but he was stopping that year. And he just finished the half stage into the Promenade des Anglais in Nice. And before the time trial, I went up the Col d'Ez, so I caught him. I said, hey, are you packing in, Paul? He goes, yeah. Well, he said, I'm not really packing. I'm going to race in the UK for 2 years, probably, but I can't tell you who I'm racing for. I said, oh, I'm not really interested. Okay. I said, well, any chance you might like to consider being alongside me in the commentary box? I said, we're doing so much television now, a second voice might stop me boring the viewers completely. And he said, yeah, I could give it a go. Okay, I said, well, I've got no powers to invite you to do it, but I'll mention it to the network. I told them, and then things moved on about 6 months, and then they got a big deal with the tour. They're going to put the tour on live every day. It needed 2 voices, and they got the money now. So they said, hey, your mate, any chance he would like to work with us? Is he any good? I said, well, he's got a personality. I said, but he's not been a commentator yet, but we can shape him up.
Train him.
And that's how we started. Paul got the job. I meant they got a new angle because Paul was still racing for 2 years, and he was racing in Britain. Now, at the time, Paul was poised to sign this contract, and I didn't know who with. And I said, Paul, just out of precaution, just write in your contract you can't race during the month of July because of the Tour de France. And so he said, okay. So he had it written into his contract. He was free not to race in the month of July. The offer came in. He was able to accept it. But then this guy rang me, and I knew him. He was the general manager of the TI Rally team. And he says, Phil, George here. I said, hi, George. I haven't heard of you for ages. How are you going? Listen, he said, I've got this strange thing from Paul Sherwen. I said, what is it? He said, okay, I'll come clean. We're signing him as a pro. Oh, I said, it's you, is it? He goes, yeah. He said, well, but he's put in his contract, no racing in July. I said, hey, George, there's a chance he could be alongside me on the Tour de France. I said, I'll make sure that your sponsors, you're allowed to wear his sponsors on his shirt and stuff on the TV, get a lot of exposure. And no, he says, that's great. I'm in. And that's what happened. So Paul came alongside me. Our characters are very alike. We're 12 years different in age, and we came from about 25 kilometres away from each other in the northwest of England. We spoke the same language, same sense of humour, and we joked our way through life for 33 years. We really did. You know, in my documentary, you see me go up to open the commentary box door to go in, open the door, the noise was incredible. I put my computer down. I said, can you turn the music down? He goes, what? Can you turn the music down? I can't hear you. The music's too loud. You know, and that's what he did. And we laughed. And we never argued, not once in all those years. And we had a system. I hate people who jump on each other. Commentators get so excited they forget they're just riding the race now because they're usually ex-pros who are now commentators. They get so into the race talking, they forget they're talking to television and that there's a co-commentator in the box, namely me at this occasion. And I'm going, making the sign to shut up. And then you pull them back to real life. Well, with Paul and I, it never once happened did we jump on each other in anything that came on the screen, a major accident, sprint. I used to just squeeze his leg when it was time for me to talk. And if he was going to talk, he put his single finger up and just hold it there. And I just calmly reach a full stop and he'd take it over. And that's what we did throughout our whole career.
So from what I understand, I love that. Obviously it had to be a system, but there would have come a point after a few years, I'm assuming not even that long, that you would have understood the ebbs and flows, and you even feel it after 6 hours. You can feel when the right time is to talk, let alone after years.
Exactly.
Tell me about when you were doing individual commentary and then all of a sudden you had a co-commentator. Was it hard? And then when you went back to individual stuff, like, did you find it easier or harder working with someone, or you actually didn't mind just doing stuff on your own?
Well, until I got Paul on side, I didn't really ever have a co-commentator, you see, because as I say, I was a little bit of a pioneer, and we were just getting into streaming television and stuff. And so we were now getting, Eurosport was starting, for example, which was doing wall-to-wall copy, slab copy, as I call it, because they didn't have a presenter on site. They just roll the pictures and off we go talk about it. And it was only one commentator. And I used to get called in and just put a voice on a film. They had me doing all sorts of White River canoeing, tennis. I said, guys, I know nothing about these sports. No, but you speak English. So what can I say to that?
So you just describe what you saw.
Just describe what you saw. I had to go and find somebody that knew what even the name was the river was.
Right.
Because nobody knew what even river the world title was being held on. We have no internet in those days. I couldn't go and check anything.
When you weren't knowledgeable about something like that, or for instance in a cycling race, and you realised you didn't have as much knowledge as you wanted, or you didn't know the rider's name or the history of that rider, in the moment, you're talking your way through those situations, what would you do?
Panic sometimes, but I think that's the first thing, is you don't panic. And the more you hear your production team, like the producer, he starts effing and blinding because the camera's not right or the helicopter's not in the right position. It's all in your ear. And I've actually put the cables on and said, can you all just shut up? I'm trying to commentate, guys. But don't forget, I was a newcomer too. And I didn't have any power to shut anybody up. And the producers are the boss, and they got really annoyed at sometimes. But the more annoyed they get, the calmer I go.
Wow.
And it's always been the case in life. If everybody's now in a real troublesome situation, I think, well, we've got to see our way out of this.
What about training for that? Like, I think back, okay, you came into the booth.
Yeah.
You were given that pretty much, we like who you are, be who you are, but I'm assuming you wanted to be better, and you're thinking, you're listening to other commentators, or you'd heard other people. I don't know. What was your way to hone the skill and to keep it sharp? And, you know, were you out there watching people in the street, thinking about how you would like to describe what they were doing? Were you observing people? Was there meeting the riders, going out and talking to the riders so you knew their personalities as well? What were you doing to continually hone that skill?
I'm just very observant. And, by the way, so was Paul Sherwen.
Right.
We used to say, just call me Mr. Observant, is what he used to say. It's his favourite saying. But you have to remember, you can only talk about what you can see on what was in our days 14-inch screens, monitors. If you see a couple having a real boxing match and a dog trying to kill the cat, and he's not on the shot you're looking at, it's no good commentating on the cat and the dog fighting each other. So you've got to only see what you see on the screen. You've got to be subtle when you build a picture around. It was like when we had the situation where the Green Edge cycle team bus came under the banner, which had just been lowered for the arrival of the Tour de France because the bus was late, and the bus hit the top of the banner and wedged. And it was right by our commentary box at the same level because we were on a tiered level. And I looked at the banner leaning, looked at the bus, I looked at Paul, but we were talking live, so we couldn't start saying, hey, we're going to get squashed here.
And they weren't on the pictures yet?
No, they weren't on the pictures. We couldn't say.
So there's no point trying to explain to the people what's happening in front of you?
No, but in fact, in the end, I did say, well, everybody, you can't see it, but I'm sure we're going to have pictures pretty soon, but the Green Edge team bus has just hit the banner right by my shoulder. And I said, if you get a blank television sound in a minute, then we've gone. And I brought it in like that. And then we did get the pictures. And at the same time, of course, they were rearranging a new finish for the Tour. It was only 20k out. And in the end, they got the thing clear. And they finished on the line. But those things you've got to be ready for. But you've also always remember, you are the eyes of your viewer. And you've got to watch that television monitor. And I find that's, unfortunately, with a lot of the commentators now, that they're not trained commentators. That comes naturally later. But they are talking of things, I'm thinking, what's he talking about? Because you're looking at the same picture and you can't see any of the stuff he's talking about. And that's a shame. But that's why some make it and some don't, I guess.
What about the storytelling? And you've mentioned it a few times, and I've heard you speak about it even when we had a chat, and I've heard you talk about it in other areas. You know, you're trying to keep the old lady from going out and getting a cup of tea before the commercial break. But just expanding on that, because it is a real art that you're taking people on the journey, especially the Tour de France. They want to, I've heard you say this too, the soap. You know, they want to feel the story of the individual rider. And is it something that you're trying to curate before you go in, or it's something that's sort of happening and you're working with, you know, with Paul, or maybe it's Robbie, whoever it is, your co-commentator, and you're like, this is the story we want to tell today, or it's just happening? How are you doing the storytelling?
All our storytelling just comes naturally, I think. I looked at a picture, for example, in one year in Paris-Roubaix, and I saw these riders rattling over the cobblestones in just banging away and visibly vibrating shots of the chains. And I just said, this is a roller coaster of pain. And that was the phrase. people do you know created the Phil and Paul bingo, and they used to tick off the phrases and see if they could win the competition. It was all over the social media. We never actually saw it. People told us. It's part of picture painting. And even the Tour de France finally learned it wasn't just a bicycle race. It was a picture board of France and selling that country out of sight. But the French never did that. They were always honing in on the competition. Well, eventually they started showing us pictures of chateaux and the religious places, and then famous places of geography as well, and flora and fauna. And we picked up on it. Paul and I picked up on it. And I said to Paul, Dave, this is a beautiful chateau, Paul. Because at this time I had no information. We said, this is a beautiful chateau, Paul. He goes, yeah, it's Louis XIV was here in the 14th century. I don't know. I looked at him, because we were live, so I couldn't say, what do you mean? I looked at him, and he just carried on ever so casually, half smile on his face.
He'd done his research, or he knew?
No, he absolutely knew, because he lived in France for 10 years. But we started a trend then. Then eventually, I could talk about all the birds and the animals around, because birding is a big life, especially in the Alps, where they've reintroduced the vultures. And I talked about the vultures being reintroduced and said they now put them into the Alps after the Pyrenees, etc. And Paul's a lover of Africa, so he knew his 10 penny worth as well. All of a sudden, the helicopters are picking up the vultures for us to talk about.
Oh, fantastic.
But all the other commentators hadn't a clue what the heck was being seen here. I'm not going to shame him by naming the English commentator of the day at the time, but he just simply said, that's a big bird. Didn't even know it was a vulture. And unfortunately, the camera stayed on it for quite a long time, so we could talk about it. I feel like a viewer rather than a commentator, and that's very important. Now, look, it's like everybody else. I'm very fallible. When you get 150 bike riders racing for the line, and now they wear sunglasses and crash helmets the same colour, it can be really hard to nail it unless they're the famous sprinters. And so, it's easier at home on the 84 centimetre television than us on our little 20 centimetre monitor. It looks a lot clearer at home, No, tell the story. And you're right about what you said about the old lady. That's one of my favourites. I said to Paul when he started, I said, Paul, all the cyclists who are watching this show know the bike riders.
Yeah.
They can get up and turn the sound off and they'll still be as happy as sandpit. I said, but what your ambition must be is to stop the old lady who knows nothing about this cycle race leaving and making the tea before we have the commercial break. If you succeed in that, you've nailed it. And to this day, and it's happened here twice already, people have come up and said, you're a legend on TV. You actually tell us about what we're looking at. And it's happened to me twice in 24 hours this day. People don't understand the sport. And I think the new guys tend to be a little bit too complex in their explanations,
And was it something you had to continually remind yourself as you became, over years and years, very knowledgeable about what's going on? There were different levels you could have talked. You could have talked to the most, educated cyclists out there. Yet because it's something I do on the podcast, I continually I get too niche. We start talking about it as a topic and I don't realise it. And next thing I'm bantering with another cyclist, I think I've just excluded 80% of my audience now because we're talking about something so niche,
Correct.
using all these jargon words.
Yeah.
Yet I have to be reminded sometimes. Were there people that reminded you, or it was just back and forth?
No, I was always conscious of the audience, and I told Paul too. I said, "Be conscious of your viewers, Paul. Remember, we're talking to approximately in our heyday, 150 million viewers in the world." Because we were going to so many countries, Canada, USA, South Africa, Australia, all the European countries. I said, and you've got to be conscious of those people. We've got to know the country. I remember just saying one day, it was an osprey flew through the camera, just flew through the camera. I said, hey, do you see that, Paul? That was an osprey. He goes, yeah, I did. I said, it's probably migrating. Oh, social media was full of it when we went off air. I said, Phil Liggett actually said that was an osprey. How did he know that? They thought I was just a cyclist, you see.
Well, guys, the Tour de France is here, and maybe you're going to get across there and see the back end of the tour, or you're already there listening to this episode. Well, don't be like me all those years and go and pay some ridiculous roaming fee while you're abroad at the tour or when you're just traveling around overseas. You can improve your connection whilst you're on the move and protect your privacy whilst you're browsing as well. And there is a way to do this with this week's show sponsor, Saily. From the same people who brought you NordVPN, Saily is an eSIM service with plans in over 190 countries that gives you an affordable coverage without having to go find some local SIM wherever you're traveling, or even worse, paying some outrageous daily roaming fee with your existing mobile network. Over the last few years, I've been traveling back and forth to Europe for the Tour de France, for the classics this year, the Holy Week, and I often arrive back home with some expensive bills with this data roaming restrictions from my Australian network. And I wish I had known about Saily sooner. Well, this year at Holy Week, I tapped into it. I download Saily app on my device. I purchased a plan in Belgium and in France, and that was it. I installed the eSIM and I was away. Beautiful. Unlimited data. I was streaming the races while I was section hopping. It was fantastic. So Saily only needs to be installed once. So as a user, you don't have to install a new eSIM when you're traveling around in between countries. As I said before, you can eliminate those roaming fees. And just like NordVPN, you can change your virtual location, block those miscellaneous ads, and stay safer with web protection. It's all included with this package. Best of all, Saily offers 24/7 support wherever you are, whatever you're up to, whatever your issue, they'll be there to help. If you want to check it out, and I highly recommend you do if you're heading across overseas on your next trip, just download the Saily app, use the code PELOSURF to get a nice cheeky 15% off your next data plan, or you can just head across to saily.com/PeloSurf. That's PELOSURF and get your discount for just being a Life in the Peloton listener. I love being able to share this stuff with you guys. Don't make the mistake like I did all those years. Follow the link in the show notes, and let's get back to Phil Liggett.
Hi everybody, I'm Phil Liggett and you're listening to Life in the Peloton with Mitch Docker. Brought to you by our friends at MAP.
Well, take me through a day of the life of right back, and as things changed over the years, and whether potentially they got easier or harder. Because the thing I feel like now with commentators is they're almost personalities. I talk about cricket again. It's just the end of the cricket season here.
Yes,
there's
indeed.
a lot of.
Oh, don't mention the cricket. It hasn't gone down too well back home.
Great, it's gone down very well.
No, I
here.
bet it has. Yeah,
because they're all on TV. Or they're all on. They've got cameras in the booth now, and they're sort of half looking at the booth and half commentating, and then later on they're presenting. Tell me about the evolution of your time in the box and how things either got harder or easier.
When I began, I was alone. I was doing a sport that nobody involved in television knew anything about, so they just relied on me knowing it myself. There's no internet, so I couldn't go and cue in anybody. On some days, I had to get the organisers in the race I was doing to send me by fax a list of starters, because I couldn't just punch up a start list off the internet and print it out. It didn't exist. No. We didn't have mobile phones. I couldn't even take a phone away from the box with me. It was very, very difficult. And because it was British television, apart from the Tour de France, which we only did 20 minutes a week on a Saturday, we did a complete précis of the whole week we've just seen, which I did from France. And then when we got every day, it changed a little bit. But now all these films were coming in, like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Paris-Roubaix, Paris-Nice, but they were in French or whatever the native language was. There was no cheat sheet, didn't say where they were in the race, and I had to make a 12-minute, 15-minute voiceover, and I did it in things like orchestral booths in theatres. It was ridiculous. And I remember one I was doing, and the cleaner came in, and she said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And I was live doing this voiceover. I said, "No." And
she made the cut.
She didn't realise I was doing it. See.
So one take, No second takes?
Mostly one takes. Sometimes. My record is 52 takes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a bit more my realm.
51 was the fault of my co-commentator, who wasn't... He was a ski jumper.
Right.
And a very good one. But he couldn't get his words right. I was at the Winter Olympics. And the one take he got absolutely right, I fluffed it. It was unbelievable. But he never went to air. We were trying to do a post-show for after the Olympics were over. It never went to air. But basically, CBS always say, just leave him alone. He knows what to say, and he'll do it. Mm. And the words are always in the right order in my mind. You just got to get them out. Yeah.
Do you have, when you think about it, some of the most favourite times when you were really in the groove, some of the best racing you'd seen, and you felt like you articulated it just exactly how you wanted, and you think, wow, that was perfect. Whether people thought that or not, you felt it. What were those days?
Yeah, absolutely right there, Mitch. Paul and I always insisted on sharing a hotel in the same room, because that was going back to his cycling days when bike riders share rooms, because you get your thoughts out, you chat. You don't like being isolated. Now, I'm, by this time, very posh talent. Talent don't share rooms. No. They want a suite. And I used to tell the television, look, we'll have a twin-bedded room. So Paul and I went to bed at night, and we went and we told stories. He told me stories of his days on the tour. And I said, Paul, we've got to think of working this into tomorrow's show, because this is great stuff. And we just got on so well in that respect. But on some occasions, I've gone back to that room and I said, Paul, we really should resign now, because we won't get any better than you were today.
Wow.
Everything we planned on saying, we said in the right places. I said, we're knackered, but you've left a lot of happy viewers back home. And I said, and they don't forget, and they don't. And showing it reflected in the mailbag the next day. Just some days, everything you wanted to say, you said. Other days, it doesn't go that way. But it's only happened 2 or 3 times in my life. And I remember saying it to Paul. I said, Paul, send your resignation in tomorrow. You won't get any better, mate. Yeah.
Speaking of that, there's different eras of cycling, and we've certainly seen a big shift in the last 5 years since since I've left, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty happy I'm not there now, because they're going at absolute warp speed.
Yeah.
But through the different eras, like, what have been some of the favourite eras for you to commentate, and why? Like, the cyclists are different. I remember speaking to Graham Watson about taking photos of cyclists. Yes. He said when sunglasses came in, it took a lot of his beautiful images away, because you couldn't see in the eyes of the cyclist, and that told a lot about the rider. And obviously he found other ways to capture them, but that was a shift for him. What about the different eras for you commentating, and the way that the riders were, and was the connection closer, or tell me about that?
Well, the early days I was commentating on the great Eddie Merckx, and he was murdering all his rivals whenever he wanted to, any which way he liked, and that was the non-cycling British viewers weren't over impressed with all that. It wasn't football, and so it was a little bit difficult in the starter years, especially as we didn't have the money to personalise the riders by interviewing them and stuff like that. As it's gone on to the eras and the arrival of the internet and mobile phones and stuff like that, then we've got a bigger reach, and we were able to give these riders personalities, and we were able to interview them. But what Graham says is right. When they started wearing the crash helmets and the eye shades, we couldn't recognise a rider, and they all looked the same anyway. And if Geraint Thomas lost his white sunglasses, we'd probably call him Fred Bloggs. I don't know. Yeah, and it was the way it was. It was, the sport's changing all the time, and it's changing never more than now, actually. And some people are saying it's getting a bit repetitive now, because you're right about the warp speed. They are flying now.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it's drugs driving them along either. These boys are modifying their training. Pogačar, for example, only races 60 days a year. Eddie Merckx would have raced 200 days a year, you see. And even if he was tired, he'd start the race. But no, the Pog is targeting the race he wants to do well in. You don't see him for the rest of the year. No, I'm not sure I like the trend, to be honest. Yeah. I think cycling was born of a sport of hard men, really tough men. That's how it started. walking up mountains in the Pyrenees, being passed a pint of beer by a monk on top of a Pyrenean climb just to get him over the top, sleeping in the ditches, not knowing if you were still leading the Tour when you woke up. These guys were hard men. That's being eased away now. It's becoming a streamlined, highly technical sport, which is leaving me behind. I've got to be totally frank. I've got no real interest in the techniques. If you tell me that wheel is 4 grams lighter than the other one, but it costs another $2,000, it wouldn't excite me.
Do you think that's changing in commentary? Do you think that people now want to know about the new technology and things like
that? I'm not so sure. See, I admit I'm not interested in selling the sport to the cyclist.
Yeah.
He's already there. But I am excited because we work, and I don't want to make this sound derogatory, we work on international, worldwide television, mainstream television stations I work on. All the guys who are commentating basically on these streaming platforms are talking to the sports people who like that particular sport. And you'll be lucky if anybody who doesn't do cycling watches.
Yeah.
And so they get very technical, and I find it as boring as hell. I'm not that sort of person. I never was and I never will be.
Do you think you shifted the commentary for the style of race? You know, for instance, the Tour de France was, the world, specifically when you commentated maybe a smaller, not necessarily a smaller race, but like a lesser known race in the world, like a Tour of Flanders. The Belgians out there are probably killing me for saying that, but, it's not known as big around the world. Would you curate your commentary differently for the style of race?
I don't think so. You're right at what you say about Belgium is the country for the sport and still is. It is a national sport. There are certainly a lot more than just cyclists watch it on television. Like I would watch a top soccer match, and I'm not a football fan, I would watch a top soccer match on English TV and still do. And that's what happens there. It's an atmosphere. You go to the venue, like Tour de Flanders, you get 150,000 spectators, and they're all drinking on the roadside. May not be possible in Australia or the USA to do that, but it wouldn't go if you stopped it.
Yeah.
And the chip stalls are doing overtime. Because I had a fan club in Australia when I was an amateur, and they used to go there to get drunk and to see me in the lead. And if you gave them that, they put money under your saddle when you stopped, So there's a difference between it being a national sport and just being a sport in that country. And so again, you've got to entrap the viewers. But the television's changed dramatically now. As I say, you stream sports programs now. If you want to see a small race like, hope they don't shout at me, the Tour of the Alps, just a 3-day race in France, it's on TV now. And consequently, the French viewers are going to watch it, but is everybody else wondering too much? Only cyclists. I don't think your man in the street will turn on to watch the Tour of the Alps. And
it's certainly packaged up in, everyone today they talk about it with social media, only wanting to consume really small bits. Their attention span's getting less and less, and even the commentary.
That is also true, Mitch.
It's packaged up in all these different formats. You know, 5 minutes, winning move, 20 minutes. Then you've got the whole stage. Look, for me, watching a race that I need to learn about, and maybe I haven't trying to catch up on what's going on in cycling. Probably don't have time to watch the whole race, but I know I can't get enough out of the highlights. So I've got to find something in the middle because I need to understand. Why a move has happened, why someone is able to attack over that climb. It's the lead up, it's the crosswind before it's the corner. So it's different now that the commentary is packaged up a different way.
Totally, and it's because now there's so much to choose, and of course, it's now all pay-per-view. And this is, the Tour of Britain, the Tour de France is coming to the UK next year. The women's race will start in Leeds in England and go race south, and the men's race will start in Edinburgh in Scotland and race south through England and down through Wales. Now, it's not going to be seen on television because it's all pay-per-view now, and you're paying, I don't know the figure, about $80 a month. Now, cyclists are notoriously tight anyway. Paying $80 isn't their thing. But I've read a story that the organisers are saying that they will work very hard to get some network through the contractual forest to cover the opening days of the Tour de France in England on free-to-air television. And I think, and that way they will reach the people, because the people of the UK will flock to the roadside in their tens of thousands. They've done it so often for the Tour de France.
Yeah, they do.
So everything's changing now. And now, of course, the next thing is, of course, the teams want a slice of the TV rights for their coffers, as in fact they do in soccer. You know, that's why the football players are multimillionaires, because it is billions of pounds to put soccer on TV, and big slice goes to the star players and their clubs. But there's not enough interest in cycling to go that far just yet. The only race that everybody talks about to this day is the Tour de France. Even though the others are, if some would argue that the Giro d'Italia is the greatest race in the world, the Vuelta a España is certainly probably the hardest race on the calendar.
Happy to hear you say that.
You go and ask somebody going down the high street in London, who's leading the Vuelta a España? Eh?
Yeah.
But if you say the Tour de France, if you say to somebody, you tell them you're a pro cyclist, the first thing they say to you is, have you ridden the Tour de France? No, not yet. No, you can't be very good then. You know.
I want to talk back about the art of commentary and the riders, the guys who you've been working with in the recent years, and I guess coaching them up, and that's what I'm sort of looking for here. You know, Robbie McEwen, you've been working with other commentators as well. Tell me what it's like now, because you and Paul had such a good connection, and it seemed like to click straight from the start. Now you've got younger commentators coming in.
Yeah, but where's their experience?
What's the advice you're giving them then?
A lot of the riders, commentators who are now performing, are kids that came to me 10 years ago and asked how they could break in. They broke in because of the persistence in trying to break in, and fine. And they deserve to be there. I heard stories used to come back to me and say, you know, so-and-so, he's telling everybody he's going to be the next Phil Liggett. I said, is he? Great. Well, as far as I know, I'm still employed, but you never know. And in fact, particularly what I'm thinking about, it's done pretty well. Look, I admire these guys because I never had to fight for my position. I was given my first job, and I was given my second, third, fourth. I've never applied for a job. These guys have worked hard, and it's so competitive now. I feel sorry because I feel that sometimes the commentators are actually trying to prove to the other guy that this one's better than you are, rather than think of the job in hand, and that's talk to the people. I don't know, I may be wrong. I'm just pleased I'm not a newcomer right now, I'll be honest. But I think I've had some good commentators alongside me, and I've always given them the best advice when they come on me. Sometimes some are frightened, they're reticent to speak, so then you've got to try and draw it out of them. But usually I start with the same phrase that I was given is, look, remember, they've given you the job here to be the analyst because you've got the personality and they think you can do the job. So don't worry about it now, and don't be posh now. You know, Paul tried to change his accent from his northwest accent to a southern accent. We say fast. He was saying faster and fast. I said, shut that up, that's crap, that. You know, and he came back to himself, and he proved so popular, Paul, and we became good friends. Robbie McEwen, I used to I still do commentate with Robbie. I love him. The guy's full of personality. He's done it all. Fastest sprint the world's ever seen at the time. But he can talk. And you've got to know when it's time to shut up and let the viewer take a breath and change voices. But he's got so much knowledge in his brain, and he's done it. Sometimes it's nice to let him go as well. And sometimes I sit back because he's talked so much, the riders are finished. I never got to do my commentary. But I say it again, I love Robbie, and I'm looking forward to working with him again. He's become one of the best commentators on the circuit, although I don't like to say that. He might be listening.
Phil, do you do a warm-up before you commentate? Because, look, I do want to spring something on you in a minute,
okay.
And whether you need to get yourself in the zone, warm up. Tell me what it's like before you go in the box.
It's not when I go on the box. I'm actually thinking 24/7. I'm not rehearsing. I'm just thinking. Okay, how many riders have got in the race? Who the superstars are? If we go to the first shot, sometimes I have to change your thoughts because they might go to a guy you've never got in your mind. But I think about everything all the time, whatever I do in life. I just don't appear to be. I seem to be happy-go-lucky. I'll have a laugh, but no, in the back of my mind here, I'm still focusing on how I'm going to say hello and welcome. It's something I always do, but I never write it down. And when I go, I still ride the bike, and when I used to be in my heyday, I used to ride the bike a lot. That's when I used to write all my speeches for dinners and stuff, riding the bike, because you're full of oxygen, you get all the best lines. No, I have a routine when I go into the commentary box. I make sure that my little half of the box, I always commentate on the right by choice, not by, I make sure the engineers put my sound box in the right position. But
why on the right?
I don't know, really. I used to fly an airplane. That was on the left.
Do you sleep on the right or the left?
I sleep on the right, actually.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. I sleep on the right of the beds, and I do it automatically. Yeah.
So right side in the commentary box. What other?
Yeah,
what other
and then
things?
These days, of course, I've got a computer. As always, there's never enough room in the commentary box these days for all the equipment you carry, because I've got one computer which has all the stats on my personal stats, which I've created on the riders. And so if a rider pops up on the screen and try and press his name, it should get some facts. Then I've got research material that may have been given or prepared, and that's in a different place. Then in the case of all the chateau and the birds and stuff, well, there's a book of that, so I try to keep the page open on the right, chapter open on the right page, stuff like that. But I never stop thinking about what's going to happen. And I sit there. I like to be in the box early. I like to be in the box 2 hours before I start talking.
Wow, 2 hours.
Yeah, it's just like I relax then, you see. Some of my co-commentators, they come in about 10 seconds before they start, but they haven't got to do the opening, then I'll bring them in, you see. So it's not too bad for them. But then the fans also want to come in. I'd sometimes bring them in to see the commentary box and stuff like that. And I always have got time for the fans, because they're my blood life. If they don't like me, then what is the point of me working?
You may be already listening to this podcast on a pair. What I'm talking about is one of this episode's partners, SHOKZ. Now, I know you've seen them around. Those headphones that everyone's using while they're out riding, running, well, just getting about. Why? Because SHOKZ are the leading sports headphones because of their bone conduction technology that allows you to listen to music or whatever while you can keep your ear open to hear the surrounds around you, making things that much more safe and allowing you to connect to the environment and the others around you while you're exercising, plus protecting your ears while you're at it. I'm a huge fan of SHOKZ headphones, and I've been using them all the time when I'm out riding, running, making calls online, or if I'm in the car making calls. They're absolutely brilliant. I love the Open Pro 2s, the sound quality, and the way they fit around with their flexible wraparound neckband. But look, if that's not your style, SHOKZ have the Open Fit as well, which are the true wireless earbud style with a soft silicone hook that goes behind your ear, because there is no connection at the back. They fit around easily, whatever you're doing or wearing. Now, guys, SHOKZ are our exclusive partner of the Race Radio series, brought to you by Stu and Harry, those guys getting across to the B program, as they call it. If you haven't heard it already, get across and check out their latest episode where they head down to France to my old favourite, Route du Sud. Of course, guys, we are looking after you here at Life in the Peloton, so head across and use the code LITP to get yourself a cheeky discount. That's LITP for $15 off. Why not? All right, let's get back to this episode. Here we go.
Welcome to Life in the Peloton, where listening is akin to mingling with the gods of cycling.
Well, Phil, what I wanted to do, and I wanted to ask you about building the crescendo towards the end of the race.
Yeah.
There's different parts of the race. They're coming into a sector or going up a climb, and even I felt this in the commentary box. There's times to be loud and excited, and there's times to just let it be. Of course, as you get to the end of the race, there's a bit of a crescendo building. Yeah. Tell me about building the crescendo to the end of the race. When's your key? Is it just naturally as the race gets exciting, or you've really got to switch on and go, okay, hey, Paul or Robbie, let's go. We've got to get going here.
Yeah, and you've got to do it by leading. When you work on American television, they seem to be of the impression you've got to scream at the top of your level the whole race because, hey man, get excited. This is a big race. This is the Tour de France. Yeah, right. But there's not very much action right now, is there? You know, but I can't talk back to them because I'm on air. And I do exactly what you say. I bring it through slowly. And I'll tell the viewers, you know, this is the cat and mouse situation. But very soon now, these guys are going to start getting agitated, and you'll gradually build it. Pogačar has got to make his move in the next 15 kilometres. So if he's going to win this race, he's got to go. He's getting twitchy, and you're building it all the time slowly. And then when you come to the end, you hit your high spots. And I've been very lucky with my voice over the years. It doesn't break when I scream. Well, I don't scream, that's why. And I was told that by independent television, ITV in England, that the amazing thing is your voice never cracks when you commentate at the highest level. And I think that's why I've pretty much got the jobs too.
Well, I want to ask, this would be a bit of a dream for me, a bit of a something I would have loved to have done, is to commentate with you. And after we commentate, to, I guess, critique how we went. There's a race that I think everyone would know. 2016, Matthew Hayman, Paris-Roubaix.
Oh, gosh.
We've got to 4K to go. There's 5 riders in the front. We've got Tom Boonen, Matt Hayman, Edvald Bosenhagen. We've got Sepp Van Mark, and we've got Ian Stannard. Behind, there's a small gap to Heinrich Hausler, Ceremotis, and Aviti Imanol Aviti. And so the gap's there, they're coming up the finish. And I thought maybe we could just come in there.
As they come to the finish?
As we come to the finish, we've got it here to play. We can commentate it now. We've got it ready to go.
Oh, my God.
Are you ready? What do you think?
I can't believe this.
I guess now, if you and I were doing this, and obviously we would have had 252 kilometres before this, or maybe 56, depending how long the race is that year, to warm up. But can we come in at 4K to go, you and I, and bring this in?
All 4K?
Yep, all 4K.
And you're my co-commentator?
I'm your co-commentator. We've been commentating for all of 0 seconds. So are you ready to go in?
Let's go.
Do you want to lead?
Yeah, I'll lead you in.
Right.
You're my co, right?
Right, let's do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mitch, we've seen one incredible Paris-Roubaix this year, but you know, we are now facing a situation. It's been a beautiful day, not perhaps what the pundits like. They like a bit of mud around, but the sun is shining, as you can see. This is the group now going forward. There's a possibility here that Australia could be writing a little bit of history into the books.
Well, I think Matt Hayman is even surprised to be in this group. He's been in the breakaway, and you can see here, Sepp Kuss is trying to get away. He doesn't want to go to the velodrome with the likes of Tom Boonen and Edvald Bosenhagen.
Yeah, and Sepp Kuss looking over his shoulder, I think it is, at the moment. Oh, the move is coming on here. This is an attack. The acceleration has come, and the move could be on here. We're racing down now towards the last single straight of cobblestones before we swing onto the track.
Well, watch out here. Ian Stannard, the Englishman, he does not want to get away here. If they give him more than 10 metres, they're not going to see him again.
Stannard there in the sky colours trying to just make this guy. He's got a little gap here now because these guys are under pressure. Remember, there's a chasing group behind, not that far back. This is the famous right turn now as they start to run down towards Roubaix Centre here at the moment. The crowd have been treated to a great race today, but they're going to be treated, I think, to a big surprise as well.
Well, I don't know. Matt Hayman is sitting at the back there. Does he have enough to do this? Has he got a last-minute effort? Ian Stannard is getting drawn back in. Tom Boonen to the front now. He can't afford to let Stannard get away.
This is Boonen's race to lose right now because Boonen is the big man. He is the man of Paris-Roubaix. He's the rider that spoilt the glory of George Hincapie of the USA as well. And the Belgians are going to scream him all the way home right now. Remember that Roubaix is just a spit and a kick, 5 kilometres, and you're back in Belgium.
Well, Tom Boonen, he's gone. Have they given this away now? Matt Hayman sitting in the perfect position here. Edvald Bosenhagen dragging Matt Hayman across. Matt Hayman 2 times in the top 10 before. Can he get inside the top 10? Can he even go for the victory?
They cannot afford to let Boonen go this way to the track because once he's on that velodrome, and it's not far, it's down the bottom of the road, we'll flip right into the stadium and a lap and a half around the track, and he's got the gap he wanted.
Matt Hayman is going over the top. I don't believe it. Over the top of Tom Boonen.
Matt Hayman, the Aussie, never won a race. He's always the man who helps others do it. Has got the biggest chance of his life now. I wonder how much they rate this man who puts the move on there.
Tom Boonen on his hands and knees. He's really struggling to get across to Matt Hayman. What am I seeing here, Phil? I never thought I would see the great Tom Boonen chasing Matt Hayman.
Well, this could be the most amazing result as Matt Hayman tries here to do what only Stuart O'Grady has ever done. That's win Paris-Roubaix. As we get down under the banner there now. Hayman still holding the gap, but he's been joined. The gap has been bridged. So let's stop cheering for Matty Hayman, Mitch, because it could be going the way now of Tom Boonen.
Well, Tom Boonen, if he takes this victory today, he will take onus of Paris-Roubaix 5 times. The only rider to win 5 times. He wants this. He's pushing on with it. Matt Hayman getting into his wheel.
You won't find a man nicer or quieter than Tom Boonen until you put him on a bike, but I'll tell you what, the same could be said of Matthew Hayman as well. The quiet man of Australian cycling, the man who's never really achieved in the sport but helped others achieve, is now on the verge of the biggest win of his life. The only problem is, I'm afraid, he's got one of the best bike riders in the world with him.
Well, they're struggling back across. Are these guys going to rejoin them back in the front? Matt Hayman would love a 2-up sprint. This will better his chances, or will it? Would it be better if Matt Hayman gets a couple more riders? Can he win the sprint? Should he attack? I don't know what he should do, Phil.
Well, we're going to find out pretty soon now as we head down towards the stadium here in Roubaix, but it's a 2-man race at the moment. The others don't seem to be clawing the way back. Little bit of hesitation just now as the riders turn right here. We're heading onto the velodrome. The crowd, the cheers, the screams, and this is the group that's going to decide Paris-Roubaix, and there's a chance that Boonen may not win.
Well, Sepp Van Mark has rejoined them now. Look at this. This is the moment they've all been waiting for. The whole classics, whole of Paris-Roubaix. It's come to this. 1 lap to go. Who is going to get this? Matt Hayman, Tom Boonen, Sepp Van Mark.
I know it's late in Australia, but everybody won't have gone to bed this time because this is the Paris-Roubaix, the greatest one-day classic in the world. Now the cat and mouse tarts. They're all thinking Boonen is the man who must make the move. But look at this. Hayman is closing the gap as well, sitting there, keeping Boonen in his place. This is becoming more like a track stand rather than the finish of Paris-Roubaix. The sprint is on. They're on the last lap, remember. It's round and it's all over. Matt Hayman has gone from the front. Who's coming over the top? It looks like Stannard now coming over the top, holding Boonen on the inside. There's the finish, and Matt Hayman has got a kick on in there. Hayman is going to take this. He's being challenged by Boonen. Matthew Hayman has done the impossible, Mitch, and you, my boy, have an Australian winner.
I don't believe it. Matt Hayman, the race, he loves this race, and he's been able to take it from none other than Tom Boonen, the best on Paris-Roubaix. Unbelievable. If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't believe it.
Well, I can join you with that one. Hi everybody, I'm Phil Liggett, and you're listening to Life in the Peloton with Mitch Docker. Brought to you by our friends at MAP. Well, you sprung that one on me. Dear me.
Well, Phil, I made some mistakes at the start there. I was calling Sepp Van Mark Sepp Kuss.
I know.
I went for it, and look, yeah, it's you do get in. You do quickly get into it, and it was hard to get into it for 4K to go. Tell me about what you were thinking.
Well, we'd forgotten a lot about, because we didn't have the privilege of doing the build-up for the last 5.5 hours, but it was a cold from a very comfortable chair here in Adelaide. But no, you've got to draw the viewer in to the action, and you've got to build it for him. You've got to explain straight away. Hayman was not a winner. I've seen Matt's the most delightful person, and he's now got a great job in the sport in the after cycling period. But he is a man that's made so many people's careers, and I've seen him left sat in the road with a broken collarbone, and he's tried to set up for a win. But that was his day. That was the biggest day of his life. And in the interview, he wasn't exactly animated in the interview after the end of that race because he didn't believe what he'd achieved, you know. And as big riders, when they win, they don't realise what they've done. It's 3 years later they think, God, I won Paris-Roubaix. And like Stephen Roach, when he won the World Championship, he told me 2 years later, he said, Phil, you were good. He actually said, you were good, he said. But I had no idea what I'd done.
It's also, and it's something that I heard as well, is that the riders themselves, you want to give them something that they can listen back on. You're telling the story of their very
Correct.
special moment. And I never thought of it like that. That if you do a bad job, let's say that word, or not a great job, that's the only footage and commentary they've got of their victory, that moment they can watch back over and hear and listen to. So you're not only doing it for the listener, I thought, and this was really good, I was like, I'm actually doing it for that rider, that moment that they can take away with them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Stephen Roach told me when he did the triple won the Tour de France, the World Championship, and the Giro d'Italia. And it was years later when he said that to me. He just said, "Phil, you were good now." He says, "You're very good now," he said, "but I had no idea what I achieved. I didn't make enough of it." And he felt he missed an opportunity. He didn't make enough of it, he said.
Tell me about that call. A few things that you can hear about me, the way we did it. Like, I think the thing I especially picked up for you was as I was coming through the last lap, I loved it. You're like, back there in Australia, I know you're staying up at night. And I was like, that's something I would have never thought of, but it was perfect because you got the viewer thinking, hey, he's talking to me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And you want to bring those viewers in. I think we did pretty good, actually. I think if you worked with me, I'd probably polish up the side for you.
Don't hold back. I want to hear it all now. I've got to get better.
Look,
getting too excited, talking over the top. I like also. There's something I've learned too. Is there's a moment at a point where you got to let the lead commentator call it in.
Yeah, that's why you got the job. I used to be very fortunate that I used to be able to call the sprints pretty much perfect, and I enjoy doing it. But you've got to be. You can't let your co-commentator take you to 200 meters to go because it takes time to get into the rhythm and build up. And I like about 2 kilometers, certainly the last kilometer, to be in charge, and then quickly take the viewer's eyes to the guys making the moves to come onto the wheels of different people. I did it with Eric Zabel once on his birthday. Can you believe? Eric was a best sprinter of the time, of course, and he was racing into Charleroi in the Tour de France on his birthday, and I was commentating with Paul, and we'd taken a big, stuck our necks out. We got the cameras to follow Zabel on the last 20 kilometres in the hope he would pull it off in the sprint. We took the viewer into the peloton, showed how his teammates got him in the position he got him in. This could have gone so horribly wrong. But no, they manipulated Eric right to where we want him to be at 300 metres, and I picked up the commentary. And I said, and Zabel now is on the second wheel of his teammate, whoever it was, and he's gone to the inside now. He's got to watch out. McEwen's coming up on the far side, and he's aware of it. And he's gone through underneath, and he's on the top. And then he won by 2 lengths, Eric Zabel, threw his arms in the air. And as he hit the line, his arms went in the air, and I shouted, "Happy birthday, Eric." And I'd not said it was his birthday throughout commentary. I'd saved that one in case he won. And he did. And the viewers will remember that.
Saving that little nugget, isn't it?
But none of it was premeditated. I mean, I don't go and say when I go into the box, we'll only talk about Zabel today. It's his birthday, he'll win. I don't do that. It's just what develops. And but you've got to make the viewers want to hear you.
Lastly, Phil, it takes a lot of energy. Even that last 4K, we both went into it, and a day in the box. It's and multiple days. It takes a bit of your energy. And what do you do after the race and to bring yourself back, to recharge? What's necessary for you to do it for all these years?
Yeah, that's a very good question. 52 tours is something of a record. I've never had a boring day. I mean, one of my proudest achievements is the fact I've commentated on every one of Mark Cavendish's 34 wins. Every one. I named him the Manx Missile, as a lot of people take the claim. Because that's what he looked like, a missile being fired by Mark Renshaw. And I was only at dinner with Mark 6 months ago, and we talked about that, and he was very, very flattered I'd named him the Manx Missile. But energy-wise, I just don't seem to get tired when I'm working. After 3 weeks and I'm flying home, God, I'm just absolutely deflated, knackered, and then think, I'm not going to get up tomorrow for stage 31, and I'm just happy. I've now moved on. That tour's behind me, but on the tour, you must never lose sight of you. You know, you read every newspaper. You know where everybody is. You're ready to go. These days, as things happen in the Tour, but maybe not cycling induced, with a demonstration or something, you've got to be ready for them. And you've got to know how to treat them on television, because there's so much political correctness these days as well. We don't want to give the demonstrators necessarily any publicity either, so we don't want to say what it's all about, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just know. What I never do is I never have lunch, because that makes you tired.
Yeah, right.
I can't have lunch. And we have a full-time chef who gets very offended. French chef, he said, "Phil, you don't come for your lunch today." I said, "No, I'm a bit too busy, don't worry. I can send it to you." "No, I'm fine, don't worry about it." And of course I don't drink alcohol and stuff like that, but I do have just a soft drink or something. And the guys who are in the room, usually French guys on the Tour de France, but often English or Australian, American and stuff, they always want to help me. Nothing's a problem to them. And I don't like, okay, I'm the commentator, I'm supposed to be, in quotes, the big man. And some commentators go, "Hey, grab me a coffee," or something like this. That's not nice. This guy's also part of the team. But they just look after me. They just look after me, and I love that. I like them making a fuss of me. You know. Unless they spill the coffee over my papers, then it's a problem. I don't know. I don't get tired on the Tour.
Phil, it's been fantastic to have you here.
You've always been good out of me. I think it's good anyway, Mitch. Yeah.
I absolutely love doing that little bit with you, and I look forward to hearing you on the TV.
Well, there can't be many more years left, Mitch, but while the viewers say they want me, then the television says they want me too.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mate.
Well, Marlow, you saw the episode. You saw Dad commentating with the best in the business. Thoughts? Any thoughts about me commentating?
I like watching you commentate with Phil Liggett.
What do you think of his voice?
It was a racy type.
Yes, he is the best voice. Marlow's working with me in the office today. It is school holidays, but I want to say a big thanks to Phil Liggett, of course, our major partner, Map, Red Bricks, who put this episode together. And, of course, you guys for listening. And, Marlow, hey, future in podcasting, bud. What do you want to do podcasting?
Racing.
Racing. You want to do racing. Wants to play footy, wants to play cricket, maybe a bit of bike riding when you get time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Until the next episode, I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you've been enjoying the Tour de France. And I really hope you took something away from Phil Liggett, the master of commentating.
This is Life in the Peloton with Mitch Docker.